16 years old and pregnant and I haven't told my parents. I'm actually 5 months along. What should I do? My parents are extremely strict. If you think your parents are strict, you haven't met mine. From the time I was a kid, I was never allowed to go to sleepovers or even go to friends' houses. All my friends had to come over to my house. Luckily, my parents are pretty cool and I do have fun with them. But I quickly started resenting them. Here's the reason I think they're super strict. My mom actually ended up getting pregnant from my dad when she was 16. So they were super young. And of course, they didn't want the same thing to happen to me. I guess I kind of understood why they were strict. When I was 13, I decided I would start sneaking out to go to parties. All of my friends had parties and I was the only one that was never allowed to go. So I actually got pretty good at sneaking out. I convinced my parents that I would go to bed early, then I would have a backpack ready and I would just sneak out the window. Luckily, I'm on the first floor. Part 2 is up. I'm 16 and pregnant and I haven't told my parents. What should I do? I got really good at sneaking out of the house to go to parties. Eventually, I started sneaking out almost 3 times a week. Anytime anyone was having a get-together, or a party, or when I was asked out by a boy. My parents had a strict rule that I could not date any boys, especially spend any time alone with them. But this boy at school that I really liked asked me out. Apparently, my friends made sure to tell him that I liked him and then he said that he liked me. So there was no way I was going to pass up on the chance to just hang out with him. I was 15 and I had never been kissed. So I snuck out of the house just like I did every other time. We actually met at a park and just talked for like 2 hours. Then he walked me home and everything was pretty innocent. I even thought about telling my parents, but I decided not to. But this boy quickly started pressuring me into doing things that I wasn't ready to do. It's not like I was sneaking out with the intention to do anything. I just wanted to have fun. But he started asking me to wear different clothes, and I did. He even asked me to get a belly button piercing. Part 3 is up. I'm 16 and pregnant, and I still haven't told my parents. And I'm also 5 months along. That's when this boy started pressuring me into get a belly button piercing. I started changing the way that I dressed, and he started pressuring me into doing things like kissing and touching. At this point, I was still sneaking out of the house almost every single night to see him. That's when he started pressuring me into going to his house instead of the park. And I said yes because I didn't want him to break up with me. When I told him I didn't want to go all the way, he told me that there were plenty of girls in school that would happily take my place. So we went all the way. At this point, I was 15 and I had just gotten my period. By the way, I didn't even tell my mom about my period because I thought they would freak. After 2 months passed, I didn't get my period, and I thought that was normal. I had literally no idea about periods. Then another 2 months passed and no period. And that's when I started feeling really sick. And I thought, well, I might as well go get a test. And it was positive. When I told the boy, he broke up with me and told me that I probably did it with somebody else. I feel like I can hide the whole pregnancy because I'm pretty skinny. My mom's asking me why I'm wearing big clothes. My parents will literally kill me. What should I do? After my boyfriend and his 4 friends tried to assault me, they told me that it was a joke. But guess what? My boyfriend held me hostage in his apartment for 4 hours before he let me leave. I took your guys' advice and I decided to break up with him. Went to his place and knocked on his door. As soon as he opened the door, I told him I was leaving him. I had no intention of entering his apartment, but he grabbed my hand, pulled me in, and locked the door behind me. Then again, he started swearing up and down that him and his friends were not trying to actually assault me, and that what they did was just a really bad joke. I told him that I took pictures of all of the evidence, all of the ripped clothes and the bruises all over my body, and the saliva they left on me. And he said that I was overreacting. After they chased me around in a house, threw me down on the ground, held me down, and forcibly kissed me, I was overreacting? Then he grabbed me and started trying to kiss me. He said that if we did the dirty, we would connect again and I would feel his love. I pushed him off and then he got really angry. He said he wouldn't let me leave until I changed my mind. Then he grabbed me again and tried to kiss me again. Of course I pulled away and then he just threw me on the couch. And he proceeded to talk to me for 3 hours telling me how much of a bad girlfriend I am. When he finally let me go, I went straight to my parents' house and straight to the cops and gave him all the evidence. They said that to test the evidence they would need at least 6 months. Now my boyfriend showed up to my house with his friends and guess what they did? Part 2 is up. That's when all the guys who assaulted me showed up to my parents' house where I was hiding. I was home alone because my parents were both at work. Hear a knock on the door and I did not expect it to be them, so of course I went and opened the door. Big mistake. As soon as I saw all of their perverted faces, I tried closing the door but they pushed in. And they came straight into the house without even asking for permission, once again violating me. My boyfriend grabbed my face gently and tried to kiss me. When I pulled away, he said, I understand why you're upset. That's why I brought all these guys over here so we could apologize to you. At this point, I'm terrified. I'm alone and vulnerable, and these guys are the ones that were chasing me up and down the house trying to rip my clothes off. I could tell in their faces that they wanted to jump me again. They all just stared at me, like right through me. Suddenly, one of them grabbed my hand and said, we just wanted to apologize. We took the joke too far and we want you to know that we weren't trying to hurt you. I pulled my hand away and asked them to leave. My boyfriend said, no, we're planning on staying with you for a little bit. Then they all went into the living room and sat down. That's when my boyfriend took me into the kitchen and asked me to serve them drinks. It's just another way for them to try to control me and play their sadistic games. Guess what happens next? Part 3 is up. That's when my boyfriend forced me to go in the kitchen and get my attackers drinks. That's when I made the decision to play along so that they wouldn't hurt me. Got them drinks and put them down on the table. They all just stared at me without saying nothing. Their disgusting perverted eyes all over my body. And that's when I realized I was in a really tight workout set. Remembered I had a hoodie in the kitchen and I went and put it on. Even though I put on that damn hoodie, I still felt naked. It felt like they could see right through my clothes. I grabbed a knife and put it in my hoodie. I come back outside and my boyfriend asks me if I'm gonna accept their apology. And I said yes. I knew it was the only way they would leave me alone. I looked at all of them and I said, I accept your apology. Then one of the other guys says, so you won't go to the cops? And I said, for what? And he said, you know, for messing with you. That's when the other guys told him to shut up. Finally, one of them stood up and said, you know you liked it. My boyfriend grabbed him and pushed him down on the floor. My boyfriend finally told them all to leave. As soon as I did, I locked all the doors and windows. So now these guys know where I live. I called my parents and they came home. What do I do? Get ready with me for my best friend's wedding and story time about how I got fired from a job that she got me because a guy accused me of sexually assaulting him. Yes, attempted sexual assault is more like it. Obviously, my beautiful best friend is getting married today. It was actually this past weekend, but I showed up with my hair really clean. Serena and I met when we studied at the same conservatory, Stella Adler Studio of Acting in New York City. This is also where I met my husband, so we've known each other for 10 years. Guys, this was back in 2012. By the way, I completely changed my hairstyle because Serena gave me a gift basket, and in the gift basket, there was this beautiful bow on it. So I decided I needed to incorporate the bow into my hair. I went ahead and started straightening my hair, which I had washed in the morning. Look how shiny my hair looks. Shout out to my K18 shampoo for that. Back to the story. After we graduated from school, I actually did book a few roles. I got the role of playing the girlfriend of Harvey Keitel and The Comedian and some other stuff. Then I got married and then I went back to New York and I had no job. Serena at the time was working for a company called S3, like the letter S and the number 3. I'm done hiding from these people, so I am calling them out. Oh, I also started curling the ends of my hair, which unfortunately the curls did not stay, but it still looked pretty. So Serena got me the job, and let me tell you, there were only men working at this office with the exception of one other woman, and Serena and me. So you can imagine it was a very misogynistic place to work at. Men would stare at us like we were Martians, but mostly because they were looking at our bodies. How beautiful does my hair look? Go to part 2. Ready with me for my bestie's wedding, plus story time about how she got me a job that I was fired from for supposedly offering a guy a BJ. Like I said in part 1, working here was weird because there were only men, except for one other woman, Serena and me. Serena is my best friend, by the way, who is getting married today. By the way, this whole filming of this process was super uncomfortable because I didn't have a really good setup, but I did my best. By the way, I tried a new foundation, the Hourglass one, and it was phenomenal. Beautiful. I ended up getting sat next to this one guy. He was the youngest guy in the office, good looking, he was really funny. Everyone told me that as soon as I started working there, this guy completely changed. He was funny, he was talking, he was making jokes. He literally looked happy at the job. Before I showed up, apparently he was not very much like that. So him and I would have really cool conversations. We would talk about movies and all that. But obviously, we're at work, so it was nothing weird. Eventually, we started talking about the women that he dated, which I would give him advice and whatever. It was nothing deep. Then one day, the manager, Gabe, he emails me and tells me that I don't need to show up for work. You guys, I almost pooped my pants. I had a bad feeling. I asked him why, and he said, oh, we're just not that busy today. And the following day, he asked me not to show up again. He just didn't have the balls to fire me. Part 2 is up. Ready with me for my bestie's wedding, plus story time about how I got fired from a job for supposedly sexually assaulting somebody, or attempted. Because my manager at this job called S3 did not have the balls to fire me, he actually asked Serena, my best friend, the girl who is getting married today, who I am getting ready for, yeah, he asked her to fire me. She asked me to meet her at the park, and as soon as I get there, she starts to cry. So I start to cry. Then she tells me that they fired me. And guess what? They didn't even give her a reason. I go home, I'm depressed for the next 2 weeks, I'm crying every single day. But Serena got to investigating. 2 months later, she calls me while I'm in Egypt. She tells me the truth. Apparently, the guy that I sat next to every single day at this job, by the way, his name is Justin. He invented this whole lie about how I would accost him in the kitchen at work. I would offer myself to him, and on several occasions, I asked him if he wanted a BJ at work. In reality, this guy was so in love with me that he couldn't sit next to me at work every day. So he figured the best thing to do to get rid of me was to invent a lie to get me fired. By the way, the day that I got fired, I texted him and he felt so bad. He even offered me money, you guys. All the while, he was the one that got me fired. Should I sue these people? This is the final makeup look for the wedding. I love you guys. Bye. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? A month ago, I borrowed my mom's phone and she had no idea, but I looked at all of her apps and found that she was cheating with multiple men. I'm 26 years old and my parents have now been married for 30 years. I actually got separated when I graduated from high school, but then they got back together a few years later. My mom has always been the one that wants to separate my dad, but he keeps wanting to get back together with her. My dad is actually in love with this woman. He adores her. He does everything for her. He's super affectionate with her, loves to take her out on dates, gives her so much of his time, and she still doesn't appreciate it. I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. My mom's always trying to find an excuse to go party with her friends, but now I know why. Like I said, I ended up borrowing her phone and she probably didn't expect me to go snooping. And honestly, it wasn't even my intention. I'm scrolling on her phone and I see the app Tinder. I nearly fell out of my seat. So I quickly scrolled through everything and started taking pictures. My mom was sending nudes to random men. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? That's when I saw that she was sending nudes to men on different apps. Not only was she on Tinder, she was also on Bumble and an app for older people. Mind you, my father is still in love with this woman. I managed to take pictures of everything on the apps. Here's the worst part. Start going through her messages, and that's when I found that she has a boyfriend. At that point, I didn't know how long they'd been together. Now I know that she's been with him for 6 months. So every single time she goes on her weekend trips with her friends, she's actually with her boyfriend. And get this, she uses my dad's money to pay for everything. An entire week passed before I confronted her. First, I didn't know how to confront her, but I had to just do it. Every time I saw my dad, I would start to cry and he was worried about me. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad until I confronted my mom. I went up to her and I showed her all the receipts I had. So she got pissed at me for looking through her phone. By the way, at this point, I'm still living with my parents. That's when she threatened to kick me out of the house if I told my dad anything. My own mother threatening me. Then she tried to smack me across the face, so I smacked her. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? After she slapped me, I slapped her back. And I slapped her so hard she actually fell on the floor. I instantly felt bad and tried to apologize. That's when she started to cry and I started to cry. I asked her to just be honest with me and tell me the truth. She told me that she wasn't in love with my dad anymore, but that she felt bad for him because he was still in love with her. And that she'd been dating this new guy for 6 months. She even confessed that she was addicted to going on dating apps and flirting with men. That's when I told her she needed to tell my dad. That she needed to stop using his money to take her boyfriend out. Then another confession. She had spent over $25,000 on hotels that she would book for her and her new boyfriend. And apparently this guy was broke. He couldn't pay for himself. She tried to negotiate with me. If I don't tell my dad, she'd break up with her boyfriend and stop using the apps. I mean, she's my mother and I don't want to cause her pain, but it's my dad. I ended up telling her that I wouldn't tell my dad. But 2 nights ago, my dad went on a work trip. My mom is so stupid, she actually snuck in her boyfriend through her window. I heard them doing the dirty all night. Now she's begging me again not to tell my dad. I'm planning on telling my dad tonight. I'll have to keep you guys updated. Give me advice. My boyfriend's body odor is so bad that I'm considering breaking up with him. Am I the asshole? His pee-pee smells really bad. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 6 months now. The thing is, he's actually really good looking and he's hot. He's actually got an amazing body. He's an athlete. A few months into us dating, I started noticing that he was smelling a little funky. Especially when I tried to go down there, if you know what I mean. So I just never offered. Then I started noticing that he smelled really bad after every single practice. I'm the type of person that will always tell somebody if they have something in their teeth, or if there's something on your face, I'm gonna let you know. So one day I told him that he kind of stank and that he needed to take a shower. That's when he told me that his coach and his entire team are very superstitious and that they can only shower twice a week. Otherwise, they risk losing the entire season. This means I have to put up with him stinking all the time. Every time I go to kiss him, something stinks. So I basically stopped touching him. And this is making him really angry. I mean, am I a bad girlfriend? Go to part 2. Boyfriend's pee-pee smells bad. He has terrible body odor. Am I the asshole for wanting to break up with him? At this point, I couldn't even bring myself to kiss him, let alone hug him or even do anything else to his body. That meant 0 sexy time. So I decided to tell him the truth that I couldn't stand his body odor. I even told him that his pee-pee smelled really, really bad. And that for that reason, I wasn't touching him or even kissing him anymore. And he told me that I was being an inconsiderate girlfriend because the other girls of the other players on his team didn't care if their boyfriends were stinky. Then this man actually asked me to do the dirty with him. And as soon as we started kissing and trying to go at it, I started gagging at the stink of him. Then he told me that I didn't take his career seriously and he kicked me out of his apartment. Then I actually did feel like I was being the terrible girlfriend. At the same time, how could I be with him when he literally stinks so bad? 2 hours later, he showed up to my apartment, showered, and I couldn't resist myself, and we went at it. 2 days later, he stinks again. He's refusing to take a shower, and I don't know what to do now. 2 nights ago, he wanted to do the dirty, and he started kissing me, but I gagged again. Basically, I had to force myself to do it. He won't stop touching me. What should I do?
I, 34 female, met my husband's 35 male mistress at his work party, and now I don't know what to do. I never even wanted to go to this party, but he insisted that I attend. It was to celebrate the appointment of a new boss. He begged me to go, even though I wanted to spend time with our 6th son, who's 7. Eventually, I agreed that his mother could babysit and got dressed up for this party that he wanted me to attend. When we arrived, I called home to make sure that my son wasn't showing any new symptoms, as I've been quite paranoid since his strep A outbreak in his school. My husband complained, saying I don't need to be checking up on the kids. We have 3, and just need to let him show me off. I didn't really like how he implied that I was just something to show off, like I'm a trophy wife or something. He introduced me to many of his colleagues, most of whom I forgot because my mind was elsewhere. I texted my mother-in-law telling her to keep me updated, and I tried to enjoy the party. I didn't want to ruin it for my husband and knew that my paranoia would just stress him out too. So I drank some alcohol in hopes of forgetting about that and letting loose. Then the bitch came up to us. She had a smug grin on her face and greeting my husband with a hug and kiss on the cheek. I didn't think much of it. It's a pretty standard greeting. Then she started to say some things that retrospectively started pissing me off. She was calling herself his work wife and that she should help look after my children like it was some normal suggestion from a work colleague. My husband didn't seem interested. How wrong was I? Hours into the party, everyone was starting to leave. I told my husband it was 10 p.m. now and that I wanted to go home and be with the kids. He complained to me saying that he would rather stay for longer as they were going to some bar now. I told him that I didn't care. I'm going home. He let me go, saying not to wait up for him. I was getting annoyed with his dismissive behavior towards our sick child. Surely he should be just as concerned. I'm out of the building, but I realize I left my phone in the building, so I go back up to retrieve it. That's when I saw them both huddled in the corner, snogging like school children. I just grabbed my phone, took a picture for proof, and went home to be with my kids. I didn't even sleep in our bedroom. I slept in my son's room because I didn't want to see my husband when I woke up. The next day, today, he asked me if I was okay because I was acting off. I couldn't help myself and just asked him how long he had been cheating on me with her. He denied it first, telling me that he only had eyes for me, blah blah blah. But when I showed him the picture, he admitted they had been sleeping together for 3 months now. He was putting aside the fact that his son was ill because of some other woman. I felt sick to my fucking stomach, and he wanted to parade me around like a show pony just to publicly kiss her? How freaking humiliating that these people who I don't even know knew about my husband's public affair before I even had a clue. What makes me even more sick is that I've been suffering from postpartum depression. We have a 6-month-old baby and his dad is off with some other woman. I kick him out of the house and I can barely look at him. I was distracted during the day with my children, getting them ready for school tomorrow, housework, and finishing painting the kitchen cabinets. But I've exhausted all efforts to distract myself and I can't stop crying, getting mad at him and then getting mad at myself. I feel betrayed, angry, and ashamed. How much am I to blame in this too? Surely he must have been bored enough to go to someone else months after his youngest son was born. Clearly I'm doing something wrong. But what? I gave everything to this man. I gave up my career for him. I became a housewife because he felt it would be better for upbringing of our kids. I can't even stand to look at him, but the idea of divorce makes me feel violently ill, like I'm letting her win somehow. I'm genuinely begging for guidance on what to do here. Do I leave him or do I endure it for the kids? Part 2. I'm at my husband's mistress at his work party and I don't know what to do. I'm currently at my parents' house with my children. I have no idea where he is, to be honest. He didn't come home. He did leave me a voicemail telling me I was being too much and that insert mistress name was way more understanding of his needs. That I became boring after I had my son because of my PPD. My response will come in the form of a divorce, because how do I even dignify his petty voicemail with a response? My father has put me in contact with one of his legal friends. He's a shark of a family lawyer and has worked many successful cases of infidelity. He manages to get good custody and financial arrangements for single mothers. Many of you are concerned about our financial situation, but do not fret. I was in accounting and finance before I left my career, so I handled all of our family accounts. I know about every investment he's made because he would get his advice from me. We do have a joint account and I know everything that goes in and out of that account. He does have a personal account too, so I'm unsure about any money he may have spent on the other woman. My kids will be provided for because they have a trust set about my father. Their dad has put money into it, as have their grandparents on both sides. I put half of my savings into their trust too. I'm very close with my mother-in-law and we speak on the phone almost every single day. I'll probably have to let her know soon, but only once the legal proceedings have begun, because I don't want him to be tipped off about anything. I love her, but she's also a mother, and mothers do anything for their children. She'll find out soon enough. I haven't said anything to my children yet. They've asked about dad, but I told them that he's just really busy with work. I'll tell them soon, but I understand that divorce can get really messy. I want them to have that youthful ignorance for a little while longer. I messaged my husband that I intend to divorce and he simply replied okay. I assume that means he wanted this as well. Dealing with my PPD and now this, I have looked into getting myself a therapist. It's been a process, but I believe I found someone who can deal with everything that I'm going through right now. I'm looking into booking an appointment with her ASAP. Many have questioned his incidents on me attending the party, and honestly, so have I. I don't know whether they wanted to get caught or if it's some weird fetish. Either way, it was a repulsive move, but it showed me his true colors. I intend on trying to find some work so I can continue to support my boys, but I haven't worked in 8 to 9 years now, so it's going to be difficult. My husband had an affair with a woman who was a high-level executive at a tech company for at least a year. I found out in January of 2022 and he broke it off with her and we started couples therapy. He made it clear that he wanted our marriage to work. Last night, he told me that a few months before he broke up with her, she unalived herself. He said that she kept reaching out to him for months after he broke up with her, through her friends and through different phone numbers that he kept blocking. He says she attempted unaliving herself at least twice in that time. I guess he tried to help, but it didn't work. Her ex called him in May of last year to say that she had taken her own life and that she left instructions that he was to read to my husband the suicide note. Husband was featured very prominently in it, though the main reason she cited was the toxic work environment. No one would tell him when the funeral was because the note said that she didn't want him to know. He said lawyers called after that and told him that she left him $5 million, which he turned down, so it went to charity instead. He said friends of her kept calling, months later, to try to get him to contest the will, though I don't understand why they would care. In any case, my husband tells me all of this just last night, months after the fact, and I try to comfort him because this has to be devastating. But here's the thing. She's still active on LinkedIn, and I don't think it's just a bot. She gave a detailed recommendation for someone like 2 weeks ago and received one in return talking in detail about her work for over the last year. Multiple posts in the last month alone, even from other people, talking about meetings they had with her. That's the only social media she ever had, so there's nothing else for me to check. I don't know if he lied to me or if she lied to him, but either way, I'm losing my freaking mind over here. Is she alive? Is she not? Is it even any of my business? Do I try to track down the death certificate? Call her office and see if she still works there? And if she is alive, what then? Is that better? Do I tell my husband, or do I take the secret to my grave? I don't actually want her to be dead. It would mean that she put together an incredibly elaborate scheme and got multiple people in on it, all to convince him that she unalived herself, but that he was only partially responsible. It makes no sense. It makes me feel crazy like how I felt during his affair, before I finally had enough proof that he couldn't possibly deny it. I knew something was wrong, but he swore I was just paranoid. Months of lies like that work their way into your brain. You question everything you think because you can't tell what's real anymore. This just brings all of those feelings right back to the surface. And on top of that, I feel so selfish for even questioning it. A woman died. What's wrong with me that I would even consider the possibility of some giant conspiracy like this? I just want this to stop. I want to go back in time and unknow all of this. Maybe I should just leave it be. But I feel like if I could just be certain of the truth, whatever the truth is, then all these feelings would stop. I can't talk to anyone about it because none of my friends even know about the affair. And because let's be real, I'm a horrible person for even thinking this might be true. My dad is marrying my ex-girlfriend. He's 38, I'm 24, and she's 26. This is all such a mess and I really don't know how I'm supposed to feel about it. For some backstory, my dad isn't my biological father. He and my egg donor started dating when I was 2 and got married when I was 4, and then got divorced when I was 16. Honestly, I was far closer to my dad than I was to my egg donor, and my egg donor would regularly abuse the both of us. After the divorce, he tried to stay in touch with me, but my egg donor purposely isolated him from me because she was so mad that he finally became confident enough in himself to escape from her abuse. She was able to get a protective order placed on both of us to completely limit contact after the divorce, and then financially blackmailed me to continue to isolate me from him while she paid for my college. As soon as I graduated from college when I was 21, I completely cut off contact with her and reached out to him again, even though it had been over 5 years since we last spoke at that point. I was very happy to have him in my life again. My ex-girlfriend and I dated while I was in college. I was pretty low-key about the relationship because I was pretty sure if my mom ever found out I was a lesbian, she would cut me off completely. We started dating when I was 18 and dated for almost 3 years. I also never told my dad about her, since we broke up only a few months after we reconnected. He did comfort me through the breakup, but he never met her or really knew anything about her. That brings us to last night. My dad and I have a standing dinner date for every other Wednesday, but we've been so busy for the last month, so I haven't seen him since before Thanksgiving. He told me he was bringing his girlfriend to tag along, and I have to admit I was both sad because it wouldn't be just the two of us like it normally is, but also I was excited to finally meet her. Unfortunately, once I reached the restaurant, I'm absolutely floored to see my dad sitting there with my ex-girlfriend. And when my dad introduces her to me, he introduces her as his fiance, and he tells me that he wanted me to be the first to know. Apparently they got engaged 2 weeks ago, but hadn't told anyone except for her parents, who I've even met before. I must have had a shocked look on my face because he starts going into this whole thing about how he knows that I might be uncomfortable with him dating a girl who's so close in age to me, and how the age gap concerned him too, especially because of my egg donor. Well, I would never compare him to her since she was literally a groomer who started dating her tutoring student when he was 17 and then married him when he was 19. The entire time I was talking to him though, I was staring right at my ex-girlfriend in complete shock. It ended up being way too weird for me, so I just told him that I needed to go after like 5 minutes. My dad texted me again today to tell me how sorry he was to ambush me with that information, and that he was sorry it came off the way it had. He told me again that he understood if the age gap made me uncomfortable, but he hoped that I didn't think he was some kind of creep for dating a woman so much younger than him. He then told me that he felt like he was truly happy for the first time in the last 20 years, and he hoped that I could come to accept this, even if it took me a long time. I, on the other hand, am just completely lost. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know that we dated, and I don't really know whether or not I should tell him. I don't have anyone to go to about this since he's literally the person that I would vent to normally. What should I do? Part 2, my dad is marrying my ex-girlfriend. So I ended up texting my ex, Steph, and like 5 minutes later, she called me. We talked for like half an hour, and she basically told me that she was just as surprised as I was, and that she had no idea that my dad was also her boyfriend. She said that she was still reeling and was planning on telling him soon, but didn't know how to do it. My dad doesn't have any social media except for LinkedIn, and doesn't really have any pictures of me in his house. I also don't really use social media very often in an effort to keep a woman who gave birth to me out of my life. The only picture I've ever seen is one from my college graduation, and that one is just in his office. So I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. So at the end of the call with Steph, she told me that she was going to talk to him that night. I agreed and stayed by my phone, and I never got a call from my dad, which I thought was weird. I called Steph in the morning and asked her if she talked to him. She said that she had, and that he just needed some space right now. She said it would be best if I didn't talk to him about it. I thought that was really weird, so I decided to text my dad anyway. I asked him if Steph had talked to him, and he said that they had. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it, and he said that he would prefer not to, and that he thought it would be best if we just took a step back from our relationship. He said that he was really dealing with a lot, and this was all extremely hard for him. I have to say, I was pretty heartbroken when he said that, and it really got me thinking. A lot of you asked me if I'd be okay with my dad marrying Steph, and honestly, I really wouldn't be. I don't really like the idea of him dating anyone just because of how easily he's manipulated. I knew that he had been in a relationship, but I'd always told him that I didn't really want to hear about it, and that all that mattered was that he was happy. So we never really talked about his romantic life. However, I realized that even if I wasn't happy about it, and even if I seriously hated it, I wouldn't want to risk losing my dad over it. He mattered to me way more. So I decided to give him a day, and then went over to his place on Sunday. He looked pretty uncomfortable when he saw me, but I wasn't taking no for an answer, so he let me in. We sat in silence for a few moments before I basically just told him that we needed to talk about this. He was pretty quiet, and he was pretty much sitting as far as he could from me. So I told him that I really didn't want my previous relationship with Steph to change my relationship with him, and that I was okay with him getting married. He looked kind of confused on what being friends with Steph had to do with any of it. It was my turn to be confused. So I asked him if Steph had talked to him again. He said she had, and that he didn't really know how to deal with the information. It really seemed like he was tiptoeing around the subject and wouldn't even look me in the eyes. So I finally just asked him what Steph said. She told him that I was in love with him. My crazy manipulative ex really told him that I had admitted to my sexual attraction for him years ago. Apparently, her story was that we were friends, not girlfriends, just friends, when I was in college, and I told her my secret. I was pretty appalled to learn that she said that. but I had told her about how the woman who gave birth to me had claimed that my dad and I had an illicit and inappropriate relationship to get the protective order. She knew that would be a sensitive topic for my dad, and apparently she encouraged him to take some space away from me. At that point, I was enraged. I couldn't believe that she would really do something like that. After that, I told him the truth. I told him about how Steph and I had dated years ago and how I was pretty sure she made all that up so I wouldn't tell him. He believed me pretty quickly, especially when I showed him the picture of the present that she gave me for our anniversary. My dad didn't really say anything besides just apologizing to me over and over again and telling me how sorry he was for believing her. I told him that it was okay and we just hugged it out. After that, he called up Steph and asked her to come over. Part 3. My dad is marrying my ex-girlfriend. I've honestly never seen him like that. He's normally such a happy guy, but the look on his face was terrifying. Steph did end up coming, and it looked like she knew what was going to happen because she was just staring at the floor. I won't lie, when I saw her, I really just wanted to rip her hair out of her head, but sitting beside my dad really helped keep me calm. My dad told her how he knew about the truth. Steph apologized over and over again to the both of us. Apparently, she had no idea that I was his daughter at the beginning of the relationship, and she didn't make the connection until they had been dating for over a year and had started discussing marriage. She said that she felt like it was too late at that point and she felt like she couldn't lose him. That was apparently why she pushed back on the idea of meeting me, and why she really didn't want to have that dinner with me either, although she told him it was because of the age gap and that she was afraid of me judging her. Apparently, she was the one who convinced him that I'd be really against the relationship because of the age gap. She said that she told him the story about us being friends and me admitting my fantasies about my dad to her because she hoped that it would keep the two of us apart. When I asked her if she was really going to ruin my relationship with my dad over a lie like that forever, she said that she was going to tell the truth once they were married, since she was sure that he wouldn't want to go through a divorce again. Apparently, she would never dream of separating us again. What a load of BS this was. Steph was crying pretty much the whole time, and getting all of the information out of her was like pulling teeth. But eventually, we learned the truth, or at least as much as we could. She begged him not to end the relationship, but my dad was pretty much done at this point. That's when she really started going hysterical, and I swear she had a full mental breakdown. She kept screaming at me how I ruined her life, and I was honestly scared she was going to hurt me or my dad. Luckily, she didn't. She calmed down after a while, although she was still curled up on the floor. I felt pretty bad for her seeing her like that, and then I remembered what she tried to do and I just got angry all over again. I'm guessing some of my dad's neighbors called the police because they knocked the door asking about a domestic disturbance. My dad is really scared of the police because of how the woman who gave birth to me had weaponized them against him in the past, so I ended up going to talk to them. Steph tried to grab me as I walked to the door, but she couldn't even get herself off of the floor. I told the police that she was refusing to leave, and eventually they were able to escort her out. My dad and I were pretty shaken up about that, but we decided to try and get some takeout while watching one of our favorite movies together. We were pretty much hugged together the entire time and we fell asleep on the couch together. It really felt so good. I was just so happy. So that's it. Steph is officially out of my dad's life, and I convinced him to change the lock so she doesn't try to get in here again. I'm going to stay with him, at least until he gets the locks changed. I told him that I'd like to move in here with him once my lease ends in March, and he told me that he'd think about it. Right now, I just want to be around my dad. I can't say I'm happy about everything that happened, but I am really glad that my dad and I are okay. My husband didn't defend me, and it's making me want to leave him. A few weeks ago, we were in a road rage incident where we cut someone off in traffic, and it pissed the other driver off. The left lane was merging into us, and the car that was meant to give way to us wasn't slowing down, so we had no choice but to cut off the person to our right, or we would have collided with the person merging to our left. That car followed us and tailgated us, beeping its horn, and my husband kept trying to give the car room to go around us, but the car would slow down with us and speed up with us, and it followed us almost close to our house. I'm 7 months pregnant, and with this car following us, I didn't want a mysterious driver knowing where we live, so he pulled into the gas station instead. I got out, and the man got out of the car that was following us, and my husband stayed in the car. I told the man what happened and why we needed to cut him off, but he wouldn't calm down and instead was shouting and swearing, telling me I should learn to drive. When I told him it wasn't me driving but my husband, he called my husband a coward and a bitch. So I said it really was all we could do and apologized, but he slapped me and started to yell louder. A man had pulled up to a pump during all this and came over to help me and told the guy to piss off or we would call the police. I was stunned because I'd just been slapped by a stranger and I was in hysterics. My husband just sat in the car during this whole ordeal. He didn't get out even when the man had gone. I got back in the car and went home and I didn't say a word. My husband just looked guilty, but he didn't say anything. Now I don't even want to look at him. He can't even back me up in an argument. I'm pregnant with his child and he can't help me? What a prick. I, 42 male, have a 19-year-old daughter with epilepsy. It was a pretty recent development and we just now managed to get used to it and have it managed. I was downstairs one evening searching for my reading glasses when I heard her say that she was going to go take a bath. After a few minutes of fruitless searching, I went upstairs to see if I left them up there. That's when I heard a loud noise from the bathroom, like something fell. I knocked a few times and asked if she was okay, but I didn't get a response. I waited another minute before opening the door and finding her seizing and slipping under the water. What I heard was her knocking over some of the shampoo bottles when she began to shake. Her mouth went under and I freaked out. I held her up until she stopped seizing and then pulled her out of the water entirely. The bathroom isn't very big, so I carried her to a room right next door and then laid her down on the floor with a pillow. I started shouting for my wife for her meds and to bring a phone in case we needed to call EMS. She was naked, so I found a robe on the floor and threw it on her. She woke up after a few minutes, confused, and we gave her the medicine. My wife and I sat with her for probably an hour while she came back to her senses. I wanted to go to the ER, but my kid is stubborn as heck and wouldn't go. After a while, we all calmed down and left her alone to get dressed and relax. It was after that, when we were going to bed, that my wife had an attitude. I asked her what was wrong and she snapped. I was told that I should have shouted for her immediately when I realized what was happening. It was okay for me to have held her up in the bath, but it was inappropriate and disgusting that I carried our naked daughter to her bedroom and that I put a robe on her without my wife being there. She said she would have handled the situation since our daughter was nude. Obviously, I panicked and I didn't think anything of it. I told her that it was my daughter in an emergency situation and that it didn't matter. It wasn't ideal for me either, but it was just my kid. kid. She told her parents and mine over the next few days, and the results haven't been pretty. My wife's parents are furious, and my father-in-law called me every name under the sun for looking at his granddaughter. My mother-in-law and my parents were more understanding, but did say that next time I should get my wife because it would be more appropriate since our daughter was naked and that seemed perverted. My daughter said that she didn't mind that I helped her instead of her mom and didn't feel weird about it, but our families have not let up. So am I in the wrong for pulling my daughter out of the bathtub without getting my wife? I'm 23 and my ex 24 tried to unalive himself because I don't want to get back together with him after he cheated on me. Me and my ex were almost together for 2 years until I found out that he cheated on me. Ironically, he cheated on me using Reddit. And to be honest, at first I didn't believe it. But then I got hit with the undeniable proof, and so I hardened my heart and broke up with him. It was a really messy breakup with him crying, kneeling, begging, saying he only did it because he was frustrated and that he truly loved me. Other times, he blamed me for him cheating because I didn't give him enough attention. I ignored all of this and blocked his number and all his social medias. He tried using his family's phone to reach me, so I blocked him too, although I am civil with them despite all of this. Because he couldn't reach me through cyberspace, he eventually went to my house. Thankfully, we have a locked gate and my dogs were also very alert to intruders. He couldn't get in, and so he slumped in the front of our street and cried while demanding to see me. I already told my parents beforehand that I broke up with him, so my mom frantically called me saying that my ex was here crying. I immediately went back home and confronted him. He said a lot, saying how he couldn't live without me and that he'd kill himself if I wouldn't get back together with him. Now this is where I agree I did wrong. I laughed at him and said he could try. Then despite his pleas, I went inside my house, leaving him outside. After that, it became quiet for 2 to 3 weeks, so I thought that he finally left me alone. Then one day I got a call from an unknown number, and when I answered it, it was his mom crying and telling me that whatever my ex did, I should forgive him because her son is in the hospital right now after trying to unalive himself because I don't want him back anymore. I was really surprised but also worried, so I told the mom that I'll talk to my parents about this first. My dad said that he was pitiful, and although the end decision would still be mine, he hopes that I can support him for a while even if it means lying to him. My mom, on the other hand, said he's crazy and to never see him again. My sister is impartial with all of this. I also asked my friends, and they basically said don't ever meet with him because he's a manipulative ass. My relatives eventually knew this because the gossip mill around here runs fast, and said I should forgive him and to let bygones be bygones because God wouldn't forgive me if I don't forgive. I live in a misogynistic and religious country, so the behavior explains it. I do care about him and I don't want him to pass, but I also don't want to get back together with him because I know my worth. What's the best way to do things? Part 2. My ex tried to unalive himself because I don't want to get back together with him after he cheated on me. So I went no contact. I sent a text to his mom saying how I'll go no contact, but I wish for his fast recovery. Basically, it didn't go well, and it definitely got a lot worse before it got better. His mom sent me a lot of messages, and most were curses. It included a lot of derogatory words. I knew that she was mentally troubled because of what happened to her son, so I ignored it and blocked her. When I woke up, I got lots of messages and message requests, and it was because she posted what was supposed to be a private manner in social media for the whole world to see. She even posted pictures of him in the hospital and she tagged me. It was overall a very hateful post. She screenshotted my text message to her about going no contact. I was turned into a villain overnight. Most of my message requests were my ex's relatives cursing me, and some of them were random strangers who also rebuked me. Even worse, some of my own relatives berated me and said that I should have taken their advice and gone back together with him. My mom told me to go on a social media detox or just go on sites where I'd enjoy and she'd handle it. Well, she posted a response to my ex's mom's post, and it was about how she conveniently left out the part where her son cheated on me just to gain interest and sympathy. My friends also backed it up and sent receipts and screenshots. The hate died down a bit, and I also received some support where the damage had been done. My ex's company saw the post, my mom's and ex's moms, and they want to let him go because the whole issue is not good for their image since it reached a lot of people. I knew because my ex's mom privately messaged my mom to delete her post because of it. She also said that she'll delete her own post too. My mom got mad saying she'll refuse to delete it because now they want to be civil, but I told her just to delete it so that the whole thing can be forgotten. So far, the posts are still up. For context, I live in an Asian, misogynistic, religious country, so yes, I'm still getting some hate messages, but personally, I believe I can handle it. As for my dad, him and my mom are not speaking terms because my mom says that he's not taking it seriously, and my dad says that this isn't much of a big issue. To be honest, the most absurd thing about all this is how my ex is still asking for me. I got a much unneeded update from one of his circle of friends, who by the way, knew of the cheating. All of his friends knew of the cheating and didn't think to tell me. In the end, I will definitely not get into contact with any of them in the present or future.
Story time! So before the pandemic happened this one day, I was traveling and I was at the airport and I had to go through security. Obviously, as you do. So I go to security, and keep in mind, I was wearing leggings and a t-shirt. Like, it was very basic clothing. There wasn't anything on me. There was no zipper or anything. But when I went through security, I beeped. So the TSA woman was like, okay, I need to use a handheld metal detector on you. Is that okay? I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So I put my arms out and she used it on me. And the metal detector beeped at around this area on my body. So she was like, okay, I'm gonna have to pat you down. I was like, yeah, sure. So she pats me down and she doesn't find anything. Obviously, I was wearing leggings and a t-shirt. And she was like, that's strange. Have you ever had surgery? Like, do you have anything metal inside of you? And I was like, no, I've never had surgery. And she was like, okay, maybe the metal detector had a glitch. Let me just try to use it again. I was like, yeah, of course. So she uses it again, and again, it beeped at around this area on my body. And she was like, are you sure you haven't had surgery? Like, are you positive? And I was like, yes, I'm sure. I've never had surgery before. And she's like, okay, well, I need to take you to a booth and you need to undress for me. And I was like, yeah, okay. And keep in mind, she was getting very panicked at this point. Like, her eyes were genuinely, like, panicking. And I think it's because she thought that there was maybe a dangerous device inside of me. which isn't funny. So we go to the booth, I undress, and she looks at me and there's nothing there. And she was like, are you sure that you haven't had surgery? And I was like, I am sure. Okay, I haven't had surgery. Why am I beeping? And she was like, I don't know why you're beeping. There must be something inside of you. I was like, what? No. So she's like, let me just pat you down again. So she pats me down again, and then she found the tiniest charm, like that big, on the string behind my underwear. And that's what was beeping this whole time. We were very relieved at that point. Story time about one of the most horrific experiences I ever had as an introvert. When I was 15, I went to a basketball game with my dad, and it was a Lakers game to be specific. At one point during the game, during intermission, the kiss cam came on, which, as most of you know, the kiss cam is just a camera that zooms in on couples and asks them to kiss in front of the entire arena. It's like on a big screen. So the kiss cam is on, it's going to a bunch of people, they're all kissing, it's really, really cute. And then at one point, my face and my dad's face was on the kiss cam. So it said kiss with a heart with both of our faces in the heart. So we're kind of there like in shock, but we're like, okay, well, it's going to move on. Because usually when couples don't kiss or people don't kiss, the camera just moves on because it assumes they're not going to kiss. The thing is, the camera didn't move on. And the entire arena started to chant, kiss, 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 kiss. And after 40 seconds of chanting kiss without us kissing, the entire arena started to boo at us for not kissing. Entire arena booing at us. 15 years old, introvert. My dad asked to kiss. Story time, and this is actually my mom's story. When my mom was 15, she was a boarding school student, except her school wasn't only a boarding school, it was also a daytime school. So students could choose to either be a boarding school student or a daytime school student. This one night, my mom, her boarding school friend, and their daytime school friend were hanging out, and around 7 p.m., the daytime school friend wanted to go home. Back then, cell phones weren't a thing, obviously, so the three of them had to leave campus to go to a phone booth to call a cab for her. So they leave the school and they walk alongside it and past a forest, because right next to the school was a forest, and as they're walking, a man that they don't recognize passes them. Then a few seconds later, a girl that they do recognize who went to the school also passes them, so they say hi to her and they keep walking to the phone booth. Eventually, they reach the phone booth and they call a cab, and as they're waiting for a cab, suddenly, they hear a girl screaming and a bunch of leaves rustling. So they're like, oh my god, what is happening? Then a few seconds later, the guy that had passed them suddenly runs past them really, really fast. I have to do part 2. Part 2. So the guy ran past them just as the cab arrived. So my mom and her boarding school friend put their daytime school friend into the cab, and the two of them walked back towards the forest to see if something happened. But no one was there. So the two of them then walked back to campus and went to the cafeteria because it was dinner time. And in the cafeteria, they saw the girl that had passed them just sitting at a table crying. So they went up to her to ask if she was okay, and when they went up to her, they saw that she had a knife mark on her neck and a knife mark on her wrist. So they were like, oh my god, we have to take her to the principal. They take the girl, bring her to the principal, and she tells them what happened, and the principal calls the cops, and they take all of their statements. Apparently, the guy had grabbed the girl, taken her into the forest, and held a knife to her neck and told her to be quiet. But because the girl knew that my mom and her friends were nearby, she started screaming and wouldn't stop screaming. That's why the guy let her go and ran off. Eventually, the guy ended up being arrested and put in jail for having raped girls as young as 7 years old. Story time! And this is Katie's story. When Katie was 16, she used to run track and cross country, so she's gone a lot of runs. Initially, Katie used to run on roads, but she got catcalled a lot while running on roads, so eventually she found this trail by her high school that she could run on. The trail passed next to a park, then it passed next to a field where a lot of teams would practice, and eventually it would turn and pass next to her high school. So it seemed like a pretty safe trail to run on. There was the park, there was the field where people were practicing, there was her high school, there were people who would actually walk on the trail, like there were people around. Safe trail, right? No. So this one day in summer, Katie is running on the trail at about 9 p.m. And if you're wondering why she was running at 9 p.m., it was summer. It was hot. It was still light outside since it was summer. It felt safe to run at that time. It should have been safe. So she's running on the trail. She passes the park, she passes the field, and right before she gets to her high school, the trail kind of turns and it's this bend that's kind of hidden away from the park. So Katie is in that section, she's running, and she passes this guy who is in that bend. And right after she passes him, the guy starts running at her, and then he starts hissing at her like a snake. So Katie is running, the guy is right here like a foot away from her, hissing at her, and she keeps running. And then he goes, "Are you scared of me? Are you scared of me?" So Katie is obviously scared of him, and she starts booking it to get to the end of the trail and get to a major road. So she's running, the guy is running after her, saying these things, hissing at her, and eventually she makes it to the end of the trail, and she turns around, and she sees the guy at the top of the trail, or like, a few meters behind, just standing there staring at her. Katie runs home. I think this is a really important story to share just because it shows how often and how regularly women are harassed when doing normal day-to-day things. Katie was just on a run. There were people around. This shouldn't have happened. And someone said that in society, we are currently teaching girls and women to shrink their lives by being safe. So for example, some of you are going to say, well, she shouldn't have been running at 9 p.m. Why not? It was light outside. It was hot. There were people around. It should have been fine for her to run. We can't keep shrinking these girls and these women's lives to be safe. Instead, we have to do more to educate boys and educate men to respect women, and for them to also challenge their male friends who harass women. So if you have a friend who harasses a woman, whether you're a guy, a girl, non-binary, it doesn't matter, please challenge them or educate them so that we can stop this, and so that women can go and do normal day-to-day things without being harassed. So that a 16-year-old girl can go on a run without being chased by a guy and be hissed at and be asked if she's scared. Story time. So my high school used to organize these school trips, and there was a list of places you could choose to go to. And the list was amazing. It was like, go to Italy and learn how to cook fresh pasta, or go to the south of France, learn how to scuba dive, or go to Morocco. Like, honestly, the list was insane. But one of the things on the list was go to a survival camp in Scotland. For some reason, my friends and I chose that one. Not the south of France, not Italy, not Morocco. Survival camp in Scotland in October. So we're 15 years old and we're off to Scotland. It was like an 8-hour journey. We arrive, it's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So we settle in, we have dinner, and after dinner we're like, okay, we're probably gonna go to sleep, and survival is gonna start tomorrow since it's 10 p.m. and this is a school trip. No. After dinner, the organizer comes up and goes, everybody, put on some shorts, we're going for a run. So we are now running through a forest at 10 p.m. It's raining, it's 4 degrees. I have to do a part two. Part two. So we're running through the forest. We don't know where we're going. We don't know how long the run is going to last for. Let me just show you a picture. 1 second. That's me on the run. And that's me from the back. So we're running, and eventually we arrive at this giant lake. And the organizer goes, jump in and swim across it. It is it's freezing. We are in our clothes. But so we jump in. We swim across it, except it wasn't really swimming. My legs were numb. It was more of a trying to get to the other side. So eventually we get to the other side, and then we had to run back to our lodging, soaking wet. Let me show you some more pictures. That's me after the lake. I'm smiling, but I was crying inside. That's us on our run back. That's me over there, right there. And that was the first evening of our survival camp. We were there for 5 days. Usually my stories raise some sort of awareness. This one doesn't at all. It's just a story that I want to share because it just makes me laugh. Story time, and this is Claire's story. I also have to give a trigger warning for sexual assault for this one. So, when Claire was in college, she got into a fight with her roommates one day, and that night she went to a party in the apartment building that was next to hers. Unfortunately, when she was at that party, she lost her keys. So when she went back to her building, she knocked on her door, hoping that her roommates, who she was in a fight with, would open the door. But they didn't. Luckily, though, her neighbor Jack heard her knocking. So he opened his door and he was like, "Hi, are you okay?" And Claire explained the situation to him. Jack was really nice. He was like, "Well, you're welcome to stay on my couch if you want." And so Claire said yes. Jack wasn't a stranger. Claire knew him really well. Her and her roommates hung out with him all the time, so she felt safe enough to go there. When she was in his apartment, Jack was really, really nice. He ordered her some food. He made the sofa bed for her. Like, he was just honestly really nice about everything. I have to do part two. Part two, and trigger warning for sexual assault. So Jack actually also had his friend from home who was visiting him, who was staying with him. So Claire was going to have to share the living room with that friend. Claire fell asleep, and a little while after, she woke up with her pants off and something inside of her. She asked the friend what he was doing, and he told her to go back to sleep. She got up, went to Jack's room, locked the door, and slept on the floor. The next day, Claire told her roommates what happened, but they didn't believe her. And they kept hanging out with Jack, even when that friend was there. And eventually, they ended up exiling Claire from the group because she was problematic. There are a lot of things that Claire could raise awareness about in this video, but what she wants to raise awareness about is validating people's stories. A few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about. I have to do part 3. Please listen to part 3, it's important. Part 3. So a few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about, and it wasn't as understood. So a lot of people didn't believe some of these stories. So if you're one of those people who didn't believe someone's story back then, it's okay. But you know better now. So reach out to that person and validate their story. Even if what happened was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even if you're friends now, even if it seems like all of you have moved on from it, Claire guarantees that that betrayal is still inside of them. So you reaching out and validating their story will do a lot. Story time, and this is actually my neighbor Lana's story. She lives right over there. So because of the pandemic, Lana went home for a few months, and she finally came back to London in March. But when she came back, the elevator in our building was unfortunately not working. Now, Lana and I live on the 4th floor, and she had 2 big suitcases with her, so she was struggling to bring up her suitcases.
Restock.
So Lana decided to ask the man who was living on the ground floor if he would help bring up her suitcases. So she knocked on his door, asked him for help. He said yes. The man brought up her suitcases. Lana said thank you because, it was a really nice thing to do, and she said goodbye. She thought that was it. That was the end of their interaction. It wasn't. A few minutes after he helped her, Lana suddenly received friend requests on Instagram and on other social media platforms from that man. Now, we have a communal mail area, which means that downstairs there's a table and everyone's mail is on that table, and you just pick up your mail if it's for you. That man must have gone through that mail to find her name, found her on Instagram, and added her. I have to do a part 2. Part 2. So after he added her on Instagram, he messaged her. Then Lana messaged back saying, thank you again so much for having helped me today. But then the guy messaged her again, and again and again and again and again, and he wouldn't stop messaging her. And his messages would say, I think I deserve a coffee because I helped you with your suitcases. We should go get coffee. Or, you owe me dinner because I helped you with your suitcases. Lana started to feel incredibly uncomfortable. She just asked this guy for a favor. She didn't know that she would owe him a date because of it. I mean, what if Lana was actually an 80-year-old man, not a 23-year-old girl? Would that 35-year-old guy then have asked the 80-year-old man for dinner or for coffee? No. The only reason why Lana is being harassed is because she's a woman. If you help a woman, you're not owed a date. A simple thank you should be enough. I mean, Lana now feels incredibly uncomfortable in our building. Whenever she passes in front of that guy's flat, she walks really fast because she's scared to bump into him. Story time, and this is Kasha's story. So when Kasha was 20, she went to go work at her local convenience store in her small town. And because it was a small town, it usually felt safe because she knew most of the people, everyone knew everyone. The people who'd come to shop at the store were usually locals. So even when Kasha would work late at night alone, she felt safe in the store. But this one night when she was about to close, a man that she didn't recognize entered the store and went to the alcohol area and stood there for a while. So Kasha, who was about to close the store, was like, sir, come on. So she went up to the man and was like, hi, can I help you find something specific? And the man looks at her and goes, what do you like to drink? And Kasha, who's 20 years old, says, oh, I'm underage, so I can't help you there. But if you're looking for something specific, I can point it out to you. And the man looks at her and goes, I think I found what I'm looking for. So that obviously made Kasha feel very uncomfortable. Ooh, I have to do a part 2. I'm sorry. Part 2. So after the man said that to her, Kasha put up her hand and showed off an engagement ring and goes, oh, I'm already found, because she just wanted to end that conversation and she knew that saying that would probably close the topic. Keep in mind, Kasha wasn't engaged. She just wore a ring to work because men typically hit on her and she would use that as a way to get them to stop hitting on her. So Kasha then walked back to the register and waited for the man to come up with whatever he wanted to buy. And she grabbed a pepper spray that was by the counter because she started to feel very threatened by this man who was acting shady. Eventually, the man came up to the register with a bottle of alcohol, and so she rings him up, and she goes, I hope you have a good night. And the man looks at her and goes, I think I will soon enough. And the man then walks out of the store. So Kasha, obviously, is feeling very scared. What did he mean by that? The man goes, sits in his car, and waits in the parking lot. I have to do part 3. Part 3. So the man is in his car in the parking lot, and Kasha is trapped inside the store. I mean, it's 1 a.m. No one's going to come out this time. The store is supposed to be closed, and Kasha usually walks home at night. So clearly she can't do that because the man is in his car waiting. So she was literally stuck inside the store. So she considers her option. One option is sneak out from the back, try to jump a fence. Another option is to call her boyfriend, but those options don't work. So eventually she thinks, okay, I'm going to turn off the lights and I'm going to wait half an hour. And hopefully in that half hour, he'll be gone. So she does that. She waits. The man doesn't leave. So eventually she calls the cops and tells them what's happening, and the cops end up coming and talking to him, and Kasha watches from the window, and the cops end up arresting the guy. Then they come and take a statement from her, and they tell her, This man was just released from jail for sexual assault. So it's a good thing that Kasha called the cops. That's the end of Kasha's story.
I was brought up by family vloggers and it ruined my life. I, 17 female, was brought up by parents who family vlogged. They started vlogging when I was around 7 and stopped 3 years ago. I want to hugely avoid speculation as to who my family is, so I won't be sharing much more detail. The channel had over 500,000 subscribers. My parents finally stopped when there was a mental health crisis in my family as a result of the channel. This was never shared online. If you are a family vlogger or considering it, please read this and consider my perspective. I've wanted to share for a while but didn't know how to. I loved it for a while. I loved being center of attention while the camera was on, and I loved getting more toys. I stopped loving it when I realized the only time I got attention was when the camera was on, and the only time I got toys was when I performed in a way I was meant to. I'm going to list some stuff that happened and how it affected us. My siblings and I were so paranoid there was a camera on us that the only place we felt comfortable changing was in the bathroom with the lights off. I couldn't talk to my mom about anything when my mental health began to get bad because I was too scared she would share it online. If I had asked her not to do it, it wouldn't have made a difference. I now barely have a relationship with my mom. My mom considered homeschooling us so that she'd have more time to make content during the day. My best friend's mom said that she didn't want my friend to be my friend anymore because my mom kept filming her without permission. My mom didn't care how upset I was. I didn't have a single private moment. My mom woke me up with the camera on, and she often filmed right until we went to sleep. She filmed us in the bath, and although she tried to get it off the internet, it's downloaded and online forever. She shared when I got my period, even though I told her I didn't want her to. Someone attempted to kidnap my sister and found it easy because they knew her full name, address, school, and details about her. My sister didn't know he was a stranger because he knew so much about her. And there's obviously a lot more. I steal hermit crabs from souvenir shops. You know those hermit crabs they sell as pets to tourists in coastal souvenir shops? The ones with shells that have badly painted cartoon characters on them? The ones that come free with the purchase of a little plastic carrier with a thin layer of brightly colored gravel, some flake food in a shallow water dish, and a sea sponge in it. Maybe your parents let you get one while you were on vacation as a child because it's such a simple little pet, and maybe you lived for a few weeks or months or even a couple of years in that little plastic box before you noticed a bad smell and found it dead. And maybe you shrugged it off because it's just a little crab and they don't live long, right? Those crabs have a lifespan of 30 plus years. Those crabs are highly social and need to be kept in groups. Those crabs require air that's around 80% humidity or higher in order to breathe, and kept at around 26 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Those crabs need separate pools of both fresh and salt water that are deep enough to fully submerge themselves in so they can regulate their internal salinity. They need large enclosures with deep substrate to burrow down so they can molt. They need a varied and nutrient-rich diet with fresh fruits and vegetables. The little crab you got as a souvenir in the same place selling custom airbrush shirts and shark tooth necklaces died a slow and miserable death. It's a miracle it made it that far to begin with, as all hermit crabs sold in these shops and major pet retailers are collected from the wild. They have their natural shells broken off their bodies with a hammer, so they have no choice but to wear some kiddishy garbage with Spider-Man painted on it. Roughly 50% don't survive the process and no one seems to care. I care. This post was actually taken off a Reddit recap from r/confessions as one of the most clicked on stories this year. It's Reddit recap time. You can check yours out by clicking the little blue whale on the top right corner of your app. You'll also be able to see what communities took up most of your time. For me, my top 3 interests were television, gaming, and philosophy. But the most important thing that it comes down to in your Reddit recap is to find out if you're team dog or team cat. Can you guys guess what I am? I'm of course, neither. I'm too wholesome to pick sides, so I love them both equally. Check out your Reddit recap today and let me know, are you team dog or are you team cat? Now, back to the story. Several years ago, I was in one of these shops and saw hundreds of hermit crabs kept in a bare, unheated, open-air cage with only a shallow dish of water. I could smell them before I saw them, dead little bodies rotting in their shells and limbs strewn out. Children were encouraged to pick them up and play with them and beg their parents for one because they're hardly more complicated than a pet rock, right? If I bought some of them, I could give them a chance to live, but in doing so, I'd be supporting a cruel industry and funding the death of so many more. I'm not sure how long I paced around the shop with my moral dilemma before a sudden realization hit me. I have pockets. As casually as I could, I picked out a couple sickly crabs and gently put them in my pocket. My heart was racing, but no one stopped me when I walked out the door. And so started my life of crime. I don't do it often, but if I'm in town with one of those souvenir shops, I'll pop in and jailbreak a few hermit crabs. I gravitate towards the weak ones and those missing limbs. They're on their way out, but I want them to have a chance or to at least die as comfortably as they can. The ones that have pulled through are all healthy and active now. A colony of contraband crabs. Am I wrong for singing a song to my wife at our wedding and making her angry?
I just got married last week. My wife and I are both in our 30s. I am Mexican, she's American, but we both grew up in the US and both of our families know both languages. My wife planned every bit of the wedding and was very controlling and a nervous bride. But alright, I get that she was stressed. During the reception, I went to the band and asked them to play a song for me to sing to my new wife. It was Te Amare by Miguel Bosé. It was a song from our first date in a really bad Mexican restaurant, so it became a long-standing joke between us. The guest really loved the song. My mother-in-law cried and told me it was beautiful, but my bride seemed upset. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that I'm an asshole for taking the spotlight to enforce my ethnicity and not just let the band sing our song for us. So, am I the asshole? Ridiculous, right? Which bride would be mad at her groom for singing her a song like that? This story was actually taken directly from my Reddit recap as the one submission I kept coming back to this year. Reddit recap includes a summary of the time you spent on Reddit, the content you most engaged with, and the top communities you viewed or joined. Download the Reddit app today and check out your Reddit recap and let me know what post you kept coming back to so that I can share it. I cheated on my wife last night. I don't know what to do. Obviously I need to tell her, but I still haven't been able to get my head around it. One of my coworkers were leaving, so we all went out for drinks, and then to a club. My wife's not a drinking or clubbing type, so she stayed home, but was fine with me going. I was drunk. I know I was drunk. My head is still pounding. I remember being at the bar, then at the club, then waking up with the woman I didn't know on top of me in a house I didn't know. She said something like, "Oh shit, I thought you were asleep," and got off of me. I got my clothes and quickly got the hell out of there. I walked for however long until I got a taxi, and I got home at like 6 a.m. My wife works early shifts, so she started work at 5 a.m. and I haven't seen her. I don't know who the woman was. I haven't spoken to my coworkers. I don't even remember getting there. I don't remember leaving the club with her. I love my wife. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. Even drunk, I don't know how I could have even had it in my subconscious to cheat on her. I don't even think I was that drunk. Like I'd only had 3 or 4 beers before going to the club, and I usually have a pretty high tolerance. I cheated on my wife and I don't even remember. I don't know what to do now. I haven't gotten out of bed since getting home except to throw up, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to look my wife in the eye when she gets home in a couple of hours. I feel so sick. Am I wrong for refusing to put my fiancé on the house title after he kept handing me empty pens as a prank? I, 34 female, have been with my fiancé, 37 male, for 3 years, getting married before the end of this year and recently moved in the house that I inherited from my mom. The house is in my name and it took a lot of talking and convincing from him to have his name on the title as well. Now, honestly, part of me doesn't think this is a good idea, at least not right now, maybe after marriage. But anyway, I've decided to go ahead and put his name on the title so he could go ahead and start contributing towards the mortgage more and lighten my burden a little bit. We've made appointments, decided on which form of ownership we were basing this on. When it was time for me to sign the deed, my fiancé stopped me and gave me a pen saying this pen was his lucky pen and told me to use it to sign the deed. I took it and tried to sign, but turned out it was empty. He was like, "Oh, I must have forgotten," while laughing, and then pulled out his other lucky pen. I took it, tried to sign, and that one too was empty. Honestly, seeing how he was laughing, I figured he was messing with me, but he swore he wasn't and pulled out another one of his lucky pens. I tried that one too and it was empty. My fiancé started cackling and I felt humiliated, especially with how the gentleman next to him was staring. I got pissed and asked him what that was about, and he said that it was a prank. I asked, "Really? Do you really think this was a time for a prank?" He was like, "It's alright, you can use a real pen now." I pushed the paper away and said, "You know what? Never mind, because I no longer want you on the deed." He lost it completely, saying we had a deal and I can't back out just like that, and that it was a stupid joke that I took too seriously. We had an argument and I refused to sign the deed, at least not then and there. At home, he blew up again, saying I was the one who delayed the process and that he already gave me a real pen and all I had to do was sign the damn paper and get it over with. He accused me of looking for an excuse not to have him on the deed and started the silent treatment, saying there's nothing to say until those papers are signed. Did I really take it too seriously? I hired an escort for my brother with Down syndrome last month. I don't regret it and he still smiles about it. I'm 30 and my little brother is 24. He's honestly the best brother I could have asked for. I still remember the day he was born and holding my newborn baby brother when I was a kid. As we grew up, I always knew he was different, but he's my brother and I love him and I wouldn't change him. He's honestly one of my best friends, and having a brother with Down syndrome, especially one like him, has made me a better person. Last month, my parents went out of town for a few days and they asked if I'd stay with my brother and take care of the house. While he might have Down syndrome, he's not entirely helpless. He just can't really be on his own like that. So of course I agreed and brought my PS5 over and some games, snacks, and beer, and I called out of work for a few days and figured we'd have some fun just like when we were kids. We were having a great time and were talking their first day while taking turns playing Elden Ring, and my brother started the game and got to the part where the guy calls you maidenless. And I said something like, "Ooh, he called you maidenless, bro? Damn." And my brother got super sad looking and I asked him what was wrong and he said, "I am maidenless. I'll never have a girlfriend." So we talked about that for a bit, and he was actually feeling super depressed because he's never had a girlfriend and didn't think he ever would. We kind of talked it out, and he was really sad, and I decided, fuck it, we can find him a girl. I called a couple of people I knew who were into that sort of thing to see if they knew anyone.
You have people on your what?
Well, one of my buddies had a number of this girl, so I gave her a call. She was actually super sweet and understanding about the situation, and she said she'd be glad to show my brother a good time for her usual rate. She had a cousin with Down syndrome, so she was very sympathetic. I told my brother I'd paid a girl to come over and show him some fun on the condition that our parents will die without knowing I hired a prostitute to come to their house. He agreed. So I made plans for her to come over, got my brother shaved, and showered for his date. She showed up dressed up super nice, and she was also super hot. I'm no chef, but I had picked up some food from Olive Garden for them. She was a genuinely nice person and was really good with him, and I just left them to do their thing while I played the PlayStation in the living room. Eventually they passed by, going upstairs to his room. I put my headphones on and kept playing. Eventually they came back down and both had big smiles on their faces. She hung out with us a bit, then it was time for her to go. I handed her the cash plus some extra as a bonus. She said my brother was a sweetheart and that I was a good brother to do something like that for him and that she had a good time. She handed me back half the cash. Eventually my parents came back and thankfully are none the wiser, as my mother especially would probably kill me. My brother is super appreciative and said it was the most fun he'd ever had. I have no regrets. Am I wrong for getting a hotel room for my daughter entirely for herself after her stepsisters made her sleep on the floor? My dad passed away 2 weeks ago. Me, my wife Candace, and my daughter 16, Shiloh, and her stepsisters 19 and 17 flew to my hometown to attend the funeral. After that, we got 2 hotel rooms, one for me and Candace and one for the girls. While I was in the room, I got a call from Shiloh at 11 p.m. crying and sounded like she was arguing with her stepsisters. I asked her what the matter was, and she told me that her stepsisters insisted that she sleep on the floor. There was one large bed in the room, and there was enough space for all 3 girls to sleep on. I asked why, and she said she didn't know. I went to see what the issue was and talked with my stepdaughters about it. They kept talking but didn't really explain why they told her to sleep on the floor. They just shrugged and said, "It's better this way. We're more comfortable this way." I told Shiloh to grab her things, and when one of my stepdaughters asked where we were going, I told her I was booking her a hotel room. Both looked upset but didn't say anything, but they must have called their mom because she was awake when I got back and started arguing with me about giving Shiloh an entire hotel room for herself. I explained why I did it, but she said I wasted money and that Shiloh could have sucked it up for one night on the floor. I called her unreasonable for this, but she told me I showed the girls that I'm playing favorites and made my stepdaughter share a room while I gave my daughter the entire room for herself. We went home and Candace is still breaking up, saying I mishandled this. She even pointed out how my stepdaughters are upset since they're not speaking to me. Edit. It was Candace who got a room for all 3 girls as to not stir any drama and save money. She was in charge of hotel reservations since I was emotionally distressed. Also, Candace did not expect Shiloh to sleep on the floor. She wanted all 3 girls to share the bed. If she wanted all 3 girls to share the bed, why did she say Shiloh should just suck it up and sleep on the floor? Why don't you sleep on the floor and give her your spot on the bed? Go sleep with— oh my god, this post makes me so mad. I don't even want to give my opinion on it. Ew, 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 ew. For those who are calling me an asshole for giving my daughter her name, her mom did that and she's deceased, so please let's not focus on that. And also, I've known my stepdaughters since they were little. We're pretty much family and Candace is a stay-at-home mom, but I give her full access to my money since this stuff was already discussed beforehand. Pretty much everything was.